We are on.
Are we live now?
Yes. Yes.
Hello everyone, very good evening and sorry for the delay. There was some technical glitch. So I am Devato Sinha and I welcome you all and our esteemed guests of honor, Justice Geeta Mittal and Ms. Almitra Patel on behalf of Vidhi Center for Legal Policy. Unfortunately, Dia Mirza is not doing well, so she could not make it for today. Our good wishes to Dia and we hope she'll cover soon. Little bit of introduction about what Vidhi is and what we do. So Vidhi Center for Legal Policy is an independent policy research think tank that does legal research to make better laws and improve governance for the public good. Vidhi engages with the government and public institutions in the drafting of key legislations and also undertakes independent research in areas like health, environment, education, judicial reforms, gender, and sexuality. The environment team at Vidhi has been working on the implementation of key environmental law and judgments for the past few years. Some of our recent publications have been on the implementation of the management of Environment Relief Fund under the Public Liability Insurance Act 1991, review of the processes under EI Notification 2006, even this review of this draft EI Notification 2020, the functioning of NGT, to name a few projects. They are all available on our website under the research topic environment. You can go and look for our research, what we have been doing. And Garbage Matters, it is the last film in the series Courting the Environment. So we have released 4 like similar documentaries in this series starting last Diwali. It was also the first time we experimented with dismeriting our research in a different way. While we read a judgment, we just read what a summary of the proceedings are, and there are many more aspects to environmental justice, which is not always possible to translate in writing. And there are many factors which we often don't realize how important they are while a court decides upon a case, or even after judgment is delivered, how they implement. So in this series, our focus has been on understanding beyond the courtroom impact of environment judgments. Before we start screening this documentary, I would like to invite my colleague, Yogini Oak, to briefly introduce the project.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Dave, for giving me this opportunity of speaking in presence of this esteemed panel. So this project, Courting the Environment, began with the idea that the life of environmental law exists beyond the courtroom and case books. How does the law play out on the ground? While the immediate objective of the study was to identify ground level challenges and concerns with implementation of environmental judgments, it also was intended to create social awareness about the imminence of environmental degradation and initiate a conversation on strengthening post-judgment monitoring. This is ultimately intended to leverage policy reform for stronger implementation of environmental laws. This study has been carried out in 2 parts. In the first part, we created a database of environmental judgments from the Supreme Court, starting from 1980 to 2018, and analyzed them quantitatively as well as qualitatively to understand their implementation successes or failures. The research findings are compiled and published as a report on Vidhi's website. The link will be shared to the report after the screening of this movie and after the event. In the second part, an in-depth analysis of 5 landmark judgments was carried out between 2019 to 2020. This included desk-based research, field verification, and on-site interviews with relevant stakeholders. To this aim, we produced 5 documentaries in association with Riverbank Studios. I'll just take a few minutes to briefly introduce to this very exciting project of these documentaries. The first documentary that we released was Hari Fuljadi, and it dealt with the issue of firecracker pollution and firecracker ban in Delhi, wherein we studied the implementation of orders in Arjun Gopal versus Union of India, which is a Supreme Court case. The second documentary, An Unequal Fight, deals with industrial pollution in Patancheru district. Here we realized how important it is for clear implementation frameworks and mechanisms to be in place for real implementation of court orders to happen. The third documentary, My Way or Highway, was about Supreme Court's interventions for protection of wildlife corridors around Kaziranga National Park. This documentary truly made us rethink about the relationship that we as humans share with the nature, and how man-made borders really have no significance for ecology. If we are not mindful of that, we might just create ecological havocs everywhere. Such ecological havocs directly affecting human lives was created in the Uttarakhand floods of 2013, which all of us remember as a very tragic ecological event. Our fourth documentary, Ladenge Jeetenge, dealt with the issue of construction of dams in ecologically vulnerable areas such as the Upper Himalayas, and how the resilient community of Srinagar, Uttarakhand, stood up for their right and put up a tough battle against a dam company to get environmental compensation. Today's documentary, Garbage Matters, deals with the issue of solid waste management in Delhi. It sheds light on the fact for implementation to be effective, there needs to be a systemic change at all levels, even in the way we perceive the whole idea of waste itself. So that is all. I mean, this is what we've got to share about the report and the movies. Deb, you can take the screen. Should I screen that? Yeah.
Yes, yes, please.
Okay.
Almitra Patel, a civic activist and the first woman engineer to have graduated from the prestigious Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Cambridge, was appalled that Indian cities did not know what to do with their waste. In the 1990s, most of this waste was simply dumped in the open. She brought this to the attention of the Supreme Court of India, demanding a stop to the open dumping of waste. The Apex Court set up a committee to suggest solutions to the problem of solid waste management, which eventually led to the passage of the Solid Waste Management Rules 2000. Indian cities have still not learned to manage their waste. A new set of solid waste management rules have also been enacted in 2016. Many petitions, many committees, and many rules later, what has changed? Have we paid attention to the lives of those who manage our waste? We look at these questions by following the journey of waste in Delhi.
मेरी उम्र 23 साल है और मैं सुबह 6 बजे कबाड़ा बीनने जाता हूँ। कबाड़े के काम में तो खतरा ही खतरा है। हाँ, दिक्कत तो आती है। लोग बाग कहते हैं चोर ही करता है, चोर है। और दूसरी बात है, वहाँ पुलिस वाला था, वो कहता था तुम लोग भगड़ा घुसी हो, इधर साला आओगे पकड़ के बंद कर दूंगे। बहुत कुछ परेशानी हुआ है, ऐसे तो परेशानी का कोई अनगिनत कहानी है। तो उसमें ब्लेड पंच वगैरह रहते हैं, बच्चों के हाथ कट जाते हैं, तो बहुत सारा प्रॉब्लम है, गंदगी बहुत रहते हैं उसमें।
जैसे धूल मिट्टी सब चिपके रहते थे, अच्छा नहीं लगता था। तब हो गया है, मतलब आदत सी हो गई है। कानून लगाया भी तो अच्छे के लिए लगाया था, पर हुआ नहीं, ऐसा कुछ हुआ नहीं।
Delhi, the capital of India, has failed in managing its solid waste. According to the Master Plan of the City 2021, 3 of Delhi's landfill sites exhausted their capacity in 2008.
If you look at waste management in India overall, there's about 62 million tons per annum of garbage that is produced, on an annual basis, which is roughly 1,41,000 tons per day. Coming down to Delhi, amongst the metropolitans, it is the highest generator, somewhere around 11,000 to 11,500 tons per day of garbage that is collected or produced every day. Less than 5% of decentralized processing in Delhi, almost 80% of centralized incineration-based processing, which is via waste to energy plants, and then remaining of it is dumped. So I feel in terms of painting a picture on processing and disposal, I think this is the worst model that exists in the country, and contradictory to the fact that this is the capital.
Delhi has 2 distinct waste disposal mechanisms. The source of waste is mostly households and hotels. The first mechanism is the informal waste picker, and the other one, a private concessionaire employed by the MCD.
If you look at waste management in Delhi, you can basically divide it into 2 parts. One is the formal management system, which is majorly governed by the municipality, and the informal system, wherein the RWAs rope in informal sector, and then the work goes by. In the formal chain, typically it works as a contract agreement between the municipality and a private concessionaire. Basically, they hire a third-party agency that is responsible for collection, taking waste to a designated point, from where it goes for processing and disposal. In an informal chain, basically all the resident welfare associations of Delhi, they rope in informal sector for collecting waste, and then they would, in their push carts, go to a designated point, which is Dhalao in case of Delhi. And from there, it's picked up by a municipal compactor. And then in certain areas of Delhi, it goes to a fixed compactor transfer station, and from there to a waste to energy plant. In certain areas of Delhi, directly from there goes to a dumping point. So these are the 2 collection mechanisms that are adopted in Delhi predominantly.
Appalled by how Indian urban centers manage their municipal solid waste, Almitra Patel, a civic activist, filed a petition in the Supreme Court in 1996. This led to the enactment of the Municipal Solid Waste Management Rules 2000. Many petitions have been filed since, and many orders passed.
There have been some major cases in the Supreme Court. B.L. Vadera comes to my mind with the first case of trying to look at solid waste management. Then Almitra Patel's case came out, and so in municipal solid waste I'm talking. But now there have been so many judgments of the National Green Tribunals, then high courts, the lower courts. It's everywhere. But basically, after 2016, we've had this modified municipal solid waste rules. So the the rule is pretty solid, I think. The rule has all areas, all grounds covered, because long experience of understanding what the problems were in the 2000 rules.
The NGT, through orders in Almitra Patel versus Union of India, is monitoring the implementation of Solid Waste Management Rules 2016. Despite several judgments being passed by the apex court of the country and the National Green Tribunal, there are problems in their implementation. The most important one is integration. SWM Rules 2016 and SWM bylaws encouraged integration of the informal sector into the waste value chain. But the solid waste management system in Delhi barely offers any recommendations for informal waste pickers.
Delhi also has a huge population of informal workers. If you break it down into numbers, it's about 1.3 to 1.4 million. And if we talk about the country figure as a whole, 2% of the urban population of the country is informal sector, which are directly or indirectly related with waste management related jobs. Imagine a life in a city without a kabadi wala, without a rack picker. You know, the moment you throw something that has value, it just gets vanished from the road, and there's no magician out there. There's actually a rack picker, you know, who picks it up and sends it to the informal recycling stream. So I feel it's high time that cities, especially cities like Delhi, give due credit to the informal system. Also, municipalities here should play a crucial role in ensuring that informal sector is somehow integrated.
जो कूड़ा चुकते हैं बीनते हैं कबाड़ी लोग, वो तो बेचारे यही है कि अपने 150 का बिल लेते हैं, तो वही अपने बेच बाच के रोटी खा लेते हैं, चाय पानी पी लेते हैं, अपने खर्चे के लिए बीन के कबाड़ा।
Rag pickers are doing a great service. They are rendering a huge service to society. That needs to be acknowledged. They should be paid for it. Otherwise, they are living on the edge and just trying to sell whatever they pick and make a little bit of money out of it. But if they are made safe because they are constantly exposed to batteries and toxic things and rusted metal and broken glass, so they need to be looked after, they need to be made safe, they need to understand their own safety, they need to earn some money from it because it's a service.
नहीं, हमारे पास तो नहीं है आई कार्ड। अगर बन जाए तो अच्छी बात है, तो फिर जैसे हम लोग कबाड़ी का काम कर रहे हैं, कहीं पे चोरी वोरी हो रहा है, तो हम दिखा सकते हैं कि हम कबाड़ी का काम कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि हम चोरी नहीं करते। जैसा भी करते हैं इज्जत का काम करते हैं और इज्जत का खाते हैं।
The importance of acknowledging them is basically, or acknowledging the sector, is then you can actually create more robust partnerships with them. So the informal sector is responsible for a lot of the collection. Even when formal sector actors get contracts, they normally informally subcontract the informal sector. In Delhi, in East Delhi, most of the doorstep collection is still done by informal sector. The East Delhi Municipal Corporation has not very much to do with it. And they also do the segregation. They also do the hyper segregation.
NGT directed that tipping fees should be based on the quality of waste. But the tipping fee is usually charged by the plant operators based on the quantity of the mixed waste received at the plant.
Municipalities really need to up their game. Also, the kind of collaborations that they do with private bodies, there's a concept called tipping fee, wherein you sign an agreement with a private concessionaire, and most of the times these agreements are based on collection and transportation and disposal of garbage. I feel that that needs to change. In the West, tipping fee means that if you dump, you pay. If you incinerate, you pay, which means that if you use any resources of municipality, you need to pay a fee. But I think in India, we've really adopted it in a long manner. Here, if we dump, we get money. If we incinerate, we get money, which is the tipping fee. So I think tipping fee, the entire concept needs to be worked down. It has to be on collection and processing and not collection and disposal.
जो अभी यहाँ गाड़ी लगा है, ये तो लोकल इसको नहीं मिल रहा ना, ये तो कंपनी वालों को मिल रहा है, कंपनी वाले की तरफ से गाड़ी है, जो हम कूड़ा उठा रहे हैं, हमें कुछ नहीं मिल रहा है, जैसे हमें देना चाहिए था ये काम।
According to the new rules of SWM 2016, segregation is the responsibility of the waste generator. In fact, according to the new rules, segregation needs to be ensured at all steps of the waste chain. but there is no implementation happening at the grassroots level.
गीला कचरा और सूखा कचरा दोनों टाइप के कचरे उसको हमें सेग्रीगेट करना चाहिए, पर घर पे मैक्सिमम लोग नहीं करते हैं ये चीज़, बट ये एक्सरसाइज करनी चाहिए।
अब क्या पता इसका नहीं कोई वजह है ना कोई मतलब है कि क्यों का ये अभी कर रहे हैं, कोई 1 महीने से ये 2 महीने से कर रहे हैं, मैंने सब पूरा एक ही साथ बाल्टी में जाता था जीएसटी में।
अवेयरनेस, कईयों का अवेयरनेस भी नहीं है, थोड़ा आलसपन भी है, तो नहीं सब लेते हैं एक ही डस्टबिन में थ्रो कर देते हैं। घर पे ये होता है कि कूड़े वाला आता उठा के चलो ले गया, बट वो सेपरेट तो होता नहीं ना, वो एक ही जगह सब कुछ जा रहा है।
People don't segregate their waste adequately, particularly things like syringes, which diabetics use, diapers, menstrual waste, sharps, broken glass. All of that is mixed up and thrown away in the waste, routinely. And then they get injuries. And when they get injuries, they're not able to work as efficiently. And if those injuries are quite serious, for example, if there's acid that you've thrown away after cleaning and somebody opens that bottle and they're just taken a bunch of acid fumes, they might not even be able to work and they might need medical help. In which case, not only do they lose earnings, but they also lose, money for the day. And so vulnerability not only comes from external factors beyond, the control of waste generators, vulnerability is also generated by poor behavior exhibited by waste generators.
Cardboard has to go in cardboard, paper has to go in the paper. उसको जो अलग-अलग सब चीजें कबाड़ी वाले अच्छे आते थे तो वो सेग्रीगेट भी करते थे और उनका रीयूज भी होता था, लिफाफे बनते थे, बहुत कुछ होता था, लेकिन अब वो सब नहीं होता। आई थिंक पहले लोग जो करते थे वो ज्यादा बेटर काम था। अब क्योंकि हम इतने मॉडर्नाइज हो गए हैं कि हम भी कहते हैं दिस इज अ वेस्ट, वी डोंट हैव टाइम टू डू ऑल दिस।
मुझे आता नहीं था किस में क्या डाले, और गीला सूखा और जो गंदा कपड़ा या फिर हागिस वगिस, यही सब, कांच का टुकड़ा, कभी हाथ कट जाता था, पैर कट जाते थे, प्रॉब्लम होती थी।
Suppose I am the consumer, I am the citizen, I am segregating my waste. But when the waste gets collected, it gets collected again in the same bin, in the same trolley. If you want my segregated waste, you must show that 2 waste streams are going to different places. So that it's a systemic requirement. So for citizens' action to succeed, you need the systems also in place. Otherwise, you lose motivation.
If the garbage guy comes, they should be that much educated that आपने कौन सा कूड़ा गीले में रखना है या वो उसके पास 2 boxes हो. They just come with a big bag and everybody is giving the black bags to them or whatever bags they have, or they empty their buckets in there. They don't separate it. They need to make strict, or they can fine the people if it's not separated.
काम का भी कुछ बदला ही नहीं है जी। काम जो कूड़ा सोसाइटी का जो कूड़ा उठाते हैं उसमें काम बदला नहीं है। ये सरकार इसमें लागू किया था कि ये गीला कूड़ा अलग, सूखा कूड़ा अलग, रिजेक्ट कूड़ा अलग देने के प्रोग्राम बनाया था, और कुछ दिनों के लिए दिया भी, कोई दिया भी नहीं। अब बताओ एकदम ही बंद है, और अभी चाह रहा किसी सोसाइटी में कैसा करे, सूखा अलग दे, गीला अलग दे, रिजेक्ट अलग दे, और इसमें उनको भी तकलीफ ज्यादा होता है। कोई सरकार का ड्रम भी दिया था कि अलग अलग कूड़ा देना है, और ये सब कुछ करते नहीं है, उसी बाल्टी को अपना काम में लगा लेते हैं, इस्तेमाल कर लेते हैं, बस वही हालत है अभी, वही सब एक साथ मिक्स ही देगा।
Do you think MCD actually communicates with the citizens? I don't think so. If they had a decent awareness campaign telling people what happens to the waste and how waste needs to be managed and how the landfills are growing and how it becomes toxic, but most citizens don't know. And a lot of them don't care because they don't know.
To tackle the issue of waste management, the mindset of the courts, implementing bodies, and people needs to change. There has to be a shift in values causing triggered responses. No rules or judgments can be implemented without a systemic change.
Waste is something which can be managed. It's not something which needs to be just thrown out and left to the municipality. The courts also are following this top-down approach. They're ordering the municipalities. Now, ordering the municipalities, how long can you, pardon the expression, but flog a dead horse? it's doing what it can. It's the nature of the beast. So you need to, if the court needs to play a role, they need to find ways in which the municipalities can work differently. Maybe order a committee which will think how the municipalities can do the same thing differently, or how they can ensure maybe a different way in which you measure success.
When it comes to court orders, I also feel that it shouldn't be all about hearings. It should be about real action on the ground, and I feel sometimes that is lacking. It shouldn't be all about paperwork where municipalities and pollution control boards are only working to submit documents to the court. I feel the court should also look into implementation in terms of what real change after an order has been prosecuted, what has happened on the ground.
सुप्रीम कोर्ट कर चुका है, पर दिल्ली नगर निगम को भी तो करना चाहिए। दिल्ली नगर निगम को भी तो देखना चाहिए कि गरीब आदमी कैसे गुजारा करेगा। इसका जो माल मेहनत का खाली सिर्फ उसको माल मिला, इसका तनख्वाह नहीं मिल रहा, तो कॉर्पोरेशन को भी कुछ करना चाहिए इसके लिए।
We have to invest money into improve recycling, because at this point in the recycling hubs that we have in Delhi, according to government, they can be polluting, and if they are polluting, it's our job to use technology and help them not to be polluting, rather than merely close them down, because that's not a solution. They'll go somewhere else and pollute somewhere else.
So we all have to train each other, including our helpers and the garbage collector, as to what is wet waste and what is dry waste, and then keep it separately and give it separately, and then hopefully it stays separate as it goes to the Dalao and when it reaches the landfill.
You have to start from your own house. Nobody else is going to come and do it for you.
It is hard to say if courts can really play that role. You know, the courts may not be in the best position to do such long-term intensive monitoring. After all, there are judicial bodies. They are very good and when they have to pass judgment on something, but to monitor action on the ground is a hard thing for the court to do. So often many of these committees which are formed, or these groups with the court orders, they end up giving a report to the court, and the court then gives some directions based on that, and the case gets closed. But nothing changes on the ground.
Or the capacities of PCBs or municipalities in a way should be upgraded so that there's a dedicated person to look into, various cases or various orders that happen on waste management or other allied issues.
वो जज जो सबसे सुप्रीम कोर्ट सबसे बड़ा है, उनका नहीं सुन रहे हैं, तो हमारे सुनेंगे? बिल्कुल भी नहीं सुनेंगे.
If you don't identify the bottlenecks, then the judgments don't make very much sense to my mind. But if you identify bottlenecks, then you can break those bottlenecks using judicial power. So the courts are doing the best, but the system has to now also meet the expectations.
Thank you, Yogini. I hope you all like the documentary, and as it is very clear from the movie that no rules of judgment can be implemented without a systemic change, and that change has to come from every level in the waste chain. So with this, I would like to now invite our first guest of honor, Justice Geeta Mittal. Justice Geeta Mittal retired as a first woman Chief Justice for the Jammu and Kashmir High Court, and she is presently the chairperson of the Broadcasting Content Complaints Council. She also held the position of acting Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court for nearly 1.5 years during 2017 and 18. Justice Mittal has been a practicing lawyer since the year 1981 until July 2004, when she was invited to be a judge of the Delhi High Court. It was the orders of her bench at Delhi High Court in 2017 which led to the framing of the model solid waste management bylaws for Delhi, which were later on notified by all the municipal authorities of Delhi. Being an acting Chief Justice of Delhi High Court, she also made several administrative reforms to reduce waste generation within the courts of Delhi, such as reduction of plastic in administrative works like single-use pen, these kind of things. And her interventions as the Chief Justice of Jammu and Kashmir High Court also led to notification of the solid waste management notification by the government of Jammu and Kashmir. And for her contributions to the judiciary and the social causes, she was awarded the Nari Shakti Puruskar Award the highest civilian honor for women in India in 2018 by the President of India. Ma'am, we all know your achievements as a lawyer, as a judge, and Chief Justice of High Courts, but your work as environmentalist really inspires us. I now invite you to please share your experiences with us. What were the different challenges you faced both inside the court room and outside the court in implementation of the directions? Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Devadatta. A very good evening to everybody. Such a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Almitra Patel, albeit virtually, and all the friends at Vidhi, as well as all the people who have joined this film release. Right at the outset, I would like to congratulate Vidhi and its entire team for this wonderful work they have done in bringing to fore the plight of the informal sector, which is engaged in solid waste management or solid waste collection, and they have restricted their focus to Delhi. And I'm sure the situation can't be any different or any better in other parts of the country. But this is a very, very important issue, and I think Vidhi needs to be thoroughly complimented for bringing this, highlighting this issue and paying so much attention to it. We have seen the film, which speaks for itself, but I'll just briefly advert to my journey or my tries with environment-related issues. It actually began in 1974 when I was representing India at an ecology event. I was a young school student at an international event in the US. The event was organized by the Girl Scouts USA and with international participation, and it was called Earth and Us, covering all 5 components of ecology: plant, animals, air, water, and earth. Unfortunately, I saw a lot about ecology. It sensitized me to what happens when an atomic plant is built and the water used for cooling the plant is released into the local lake and the fish die. And I saw the impact on penguins and of waste on penguins, etc. But the program did not really touch solid waste. And my sensitization and my learning about solid waste actually began when I was representing the Delhi Development Authority in the Delhi High Court, and the case B.L. Vadera was marked to me to represent the DDA's interest therein. B.L. Vadera, as was just told by the film, was actually filed in the Supreme Court. He was also a great activist and did wonderful work so far as Delhi is concerned on several issues. Waste was just one of the matters. The Supreme Court transferred this case for further monitoring and further orders to the Delhi High Court. And if I'm not mistaken, at the last count, it was still pending. I don't know whether it has been closed finally. It could not have been, because the problem of solid waste has not come to an end. But from B.L. Vadera, I learned certain very, very significant lessons, which have really marked my journey and my orders and judicial mind, even as a judge. In B.L. Vadera's case, the burning issue that I saw was that the seven sanitary landfill sites in Delhi were full chock-a-block, and they were not filled recently, but they were filled several years ago. The position has not changed. The position remains the same. And in this case, we traveled a long journey, a long path of trying to find additional land to place additional sanitary landfill sites. There were no conversations of reducing your carbon footprint or reducing the waste generation or sensitizing the public on what was so essential. We went into an exercise of looking for more land for sanitary landfill sites. It's the same way as saying that as more and more people die and you look for land for burying them, ultimately what will happen to the land? It will become one huge sanitary landfill site. If we the sanitary landfill site, if we don't stop back, take a deep breath, apply our mind to what we are creating and what we are going to leave for the future generations to come, and stop creating more waste. There is no answer to the basic problem than reducing the waste generated. The whole problem that the film talks about and Vidhi is talking about, waste segregation and people who are engaged in collection of waste, has to be looked at from a more fundamental aspect, that is of reducing the amount of waste each household or each family generates. After I became a judge, in 2004, then, well, actually, it was late 2017, as they mentioned, that, when I really got into the business of looking at the laws relating to waste management, I happened to be, surfing the news channels, and something caught my eye. It was a program called Ghanti Bajao on ABP in the Hindu news series. And what I was stunned to see was mounds and mounds of garbage. What this one journalist had done was she had packed a very visible looking waste, including a pink hat, I think, and left the plastic bag in which she put all these on one of the garbage dumps in one of the dhalaus, as they're called in Delhi. And she went back every day for 7 days. The plastic bag hadn't moved an inch. Nobody had bothered to, therefore, collect the waste from the dhalau. On the 8th day, it only fell over and spilled onto the rest of the waste. Now, when I saw this program and the amount of waste which was lying all over that colony, I was really shocked. I called up my law researcher late in the night and asked him if he could collect the CD of that film, get a CD. And he called me back immediately and said the news channel was very happy and they would produce it in court at 10 o'clock. Early morning, I got them to put up a screen in my courtroom. There was a PIL relating to chikungunya and dengue, which had been closed by the preceding division bench, which was related to waste, because at that time it was almost monsoon, or monsoon was about to come, and chikungunya garbage heaps are a huge generation for huge source for the reproduction and recreate and provide a wonderful home for mosquitoes to breed. So I called up that PIL and I called the lawyers of the municipal corporation, all the local bodies, DDA, NDMC. There are 7 in Delhi, Delhi Cantonment, all the 3 municipal corporations. And I had requested the news channel, and the journalist who had presented that program and that was also on that film was himself present in court. We showed that film in court, and we had passed peremptory directions regarding cleaning up and waste generation and management of waste by the local bodies. In that case, what was different and had never been done before was that at my request, the journalist of the news channel agreed to be a local commissioner. So the local bodies would file affidavits, and we had this journalist go with this team of cameras and verify the truth of them, of the statements made by the municipal corporations. There's no time to tell you the whole story. It's a long story. But the bottom line is that ever since that year, we were able to reduce the footfall of chikungunya and dengue in Delhi, despite the huge monsoons, despite the garbage still being there. And you will see that they all began looking at better ways of collecting waste, better than what they used to be. You will see, by and large, in most dhalaus, the waste is inside the dhalau. We had insisted, we were checking the rosters of the Safai Karamcharis. Local resident welfare associations were given liberty to make complaints to us and the local commissioner, and we tried to put in a system. But in Delhi, you have the huge problem, which is of population and also of unauthorized construction. And so waste remains a huge problem as it is. But we are again talking of only the metropolitan cities. Delhi is the capital of India, and if this is the plight in Delhi, what will be the plight in other cities? And what about the other states and union territories where we haven't even begun to talk of waste, let alone waste management, let alone policy, let alone implementation of the Environment Protection Act, or the solid waste management rules they're under, or most of the union territories and states and cities don't have the bylaws, do not have the bylaws, despite orders of the Supreme Court, despite orders of the National Green Tribunal. I had Sunita Narayan in court who guided me and asked me to look into this matter. So I had appointed a committee in which the local district judge, additional district judge who was the member secretary of the Delhi State Legal Services Authority was the convener. And the experts on that committee were Sunita Narayan of Center for Science and Environment and Isha Judge. Unfortunately, we have lost her. All the local bodies, all the 7 local bodies put nominees on that committee. And this was the way the local, solid waste management bylaws were formally framed and then put to the local bodies for passing. And these were approved in the court. And then all the local bodies had to, approve them, because that is the requirement of the law. And the implementation was monitored by us. Now, what is the implementation? That is the only way that you can find somebody for littering or throwing garbage around is under not the bylaws, not the act. It is only under the bylaws, not under the rules or the act. And this is a similar exercise was undertaken in Jammu and Kashmir when I went there as a Chief Justice. In Delhi was easy because there were only 7 local bodies. But in Jammu and Kashmir, you have thousands and thousands of panchayats. I think there were over 3,000 local bodies. And by the time I came back, the government lawyer did say that all of them were notified, but I don't know what has happened. But an important part, you've talked of segregation. I'm sure Almitra Patel is going to speak on the segregation of waste, etc. What I want to, and you've spoken about the informal sector, which requires to be certainly integrated with the formal sector. They need to be recognized and the role identified, and they be sensitized in some modern methods of waste segregation. I think we need to equip them with equipment, etc., so that they can work more efficiently, and most importantly, their health and their safety is not compromised in any manner. But I think something needs to be said even about the formal sector. Solid waste has been used by them to blackmail the city when their demands were not met, sometimes justifiably. For instance, non-payment of wages for 4 months. The Safai Karamcharis of the municipal corporation concerned would refuse to pick the garbage or throw the garbage on the main roads. Now that is imperiling the health and lives of the citizens of Delhi. You cannot do that. And I think we need to take a call on this. Now also the Safai Karamcharis do not have any proper clothing. Even though they're employed by the local bodies, I think Vidhi would do well if they would press for these kind of issues as part of the policy statement. They have no proper uniforms, no proper clothing, no protective gear at all. They do not even have proper brooms or proper spades, etc., with which to pick up their garbage, and therefore we need to do something for the formal sector as well. Now, so far as the sanitary landfill sites are concerned, there is always a conflict between what is the most optimal use for them. Justice Kuldeep Singh, when he was heading the bench in the Supreme Court, said the solid landfill site can only be used for greening purposes. And we see that you have the Indraprastha Park, and you see that the Mukarba Chowk landfill site, a huge effort is on to plant trees and green it. But there have been certain compromises which have been necessary in public interest. For instance, for hiving out a little bit of the site for building yards for the metro or facilities for the metro, which was coming up in this crowded city. Let me share with you a horrifying instance of, I've spoken about lack of land for the landfill site in Delhi. But when I was in Jammu and Kashmir, an instance of, you all heard of the Wular Lake. It's the largest lake inside in Asia. And the Wular Lake happens to be in district Sopot and in the town of Sopot. And a landfill site was being planned by the DC of that area, abutting and also partially inside the lake. A grievance was made by some vigilant citizens, and we actually, the bench, me and Justice Sanjay Dutt, actually conducted a spot visit. And the reason that was espoused for making a sanitary landfill site compromised with the absolutely imperative need to preserve a water body, especially a water body of the, of the acclaim of as of Wular, was that there was no other land to make a landfill site. Now, again, even in Jammu and Kashmir, there was no conversation happening about reducing your carbon footprint or reducing the garbage. The problem, the only issue was where to park the garbage. So, and I found in Kashmir that they have no policy at all. I have not seen any landfill sites, and you see the streets, wherever you go, people throw garbage wherever they want to with full impunity. They haven't begun to implement the bylaws. I came across some fines, because I insisted on the various districts to file reports. From Gulmarg, we got a few reports about littering fines, but from the rest of the state, rest of the areas, there was hardly any fines being imposed. So, before we undertake any, any huge exercise, any formalization, formal steps, we need to first and foremost undertake a mammoth exercise in knowledge dispensation and sensitization of the population of India, entire population of India. Villages react better than people in the towns do. And to reducing the waste that is generated by every household. Unless you do that, unless you teach people to recycle even disposable plastic plates. I have friends I've seen in several areas in the United States and even in India who wash the disposable plastic plate for reusing, and instead of just throwing it into the garbage sector. You have to digitize waste management systems. And then there is a very, very serious problem about which, again, I have issued orders on this both in Delhi as well as in Jammu Kashmir. What about the e-waste? We throw away a mobile phone biannually. We change a laptop or a computer at the moment a new edition comes. But what happens to the old one? Have any of us thought about it? I think we need to look at this and start planning on the way in which this waste is to go. And also segregation of hazardous waste. Separating it into the wet and the biodegradable and the non-biodegradable as well. But at the same time, while we are advocating waste segregation, we must at the same time take on an exercise of teaching people how they can reduce the amount of waste that they generate. And I think I've run out of time, but I'd like to tell you that certain things, have are very, very imperative, and this problem cannot be ignored. And we must go beyond the boundaries of Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai when we are talking of waste management. Unless we do that and we reach out to the poorest of the poor, the common man, we will not be able to do anything. We will be able to talk of segregation of waste at the household level, at the micro level, but we must also ensure that it remains segregated till it is treated at the macro level. What is the point in a household segregating a waste? I see the municipal corporation truck which comes, and I don't know whether they keep it segregated, but outside my house, Delhi is getting really big into waste segregation by households. But, you segregate the waste also and put it in 2 plastic bags. There has to be some other way. And I don't see any sensitization, any conversation on any media, on any channel, on any print media, which could inform the people as to how they can manage the waste better. So until we do that, our conversations will really remain on paper or in discussions like this. So Debanitya, I hope you in your policy statement will advocate some of what I am requesting you, that we must pan out beyond Delhi, beyond the metropolitans, and closer into villages and hills. The hilly regions are having a biggest problem. Hoteliers just dump the waste over the hillside without caring about what happens to the mountainside or the local environment. So, all this has to be taken out at a larger level. And you may have got the solid waste management rules, but what Sunita Narayan and Isha Judge taught me, and I saw its implementation in Delhi, till you get the bylaws everywhere notified by every local body in the country and the people sensitized, we will not be able to make any headway. But certainly what you have done is a very, very important and a very big step. And I congratulate you for what you have done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for sharing your anecdotes and all the examples. Like and after hearing you, so much knowledge you have spoke about, like when their career starting from a school child, and how you combine this knowledge, and you always have a forward-looking approach, like there's a problem and how to address those things in a holistic way, not just kids and bits. So and I'm sure, like after hearing you, many of the young lawyers present today in our event, they will be inspired. And of course, like the media has a very significant role, and your talk you mentioned quite a lot about media, the role of sensitization of people. That is very much important. These are all behavioral problems, environmental problems, and until people really wants to, like there is no easy fix to those problems. And thanks also for bringing those issues like dumping of waste on wetlands, on the riverbanks, and the increasing tourism in the hills stations where consumerism, like people are now there's a no one is talking about like reducing the waste. So first thing should be refuse, then reduce, then you come to other thing, recycle thing. So thank you very much, ma'am, and we are very privileged to have you today. And we have some questions as well, but we will take those questions after listening to Mitra ma'am. So now I would like to invite Ms. Almitra Patel. So before that, I will just briefly introduce her. So I was just going through the her web's blog, and she describes herself as a garbologist, apart from being an engineer, chemist, and biologist. So garbologist itself, like an expert on garbage. It's the first time I heard this term. And our film, this documentary started with an introduction to the case of Ms. Patel, and there's no doubt her contribution as an environmentalist is immense. And she worked on a variety of environmental issues in India at a time when environmental consciousness was still at its nascent stage. So she was involved with BNHS, Bombay Natural Society, in 1969 to 71 for saving Gir lions. Then she also served as a convener of Intact Bengaluru over waste and various environmental issues. And it was after her retirement, she noticed the mounting problem waste in Indian cities. And like this is Mittal mentioned about chikungunya, dengue, so she saw the impact on feral dogs and plague that affected her. So that Almitra can tell herself about her journey. And then she was forced to file the PI in the Supreme Court. And we all know the case itself became one of the longest running environmental cases along with BL Vadera, which is still yet to be disposed. And these two cases had a significant impact on the policies and laws related to waste management in India. And ma'am, it is indeed a great honor that you agreed to share your experiences and thoughts today. So over to you, ma'am. You are muted, ma'am. You're muted. So unmute yourself.
Good evening. Congrats on your movie, and kudos to Justice Mittal, who has covered a vast gamut of issues, which I totally endorse. I would like to emphasize that when we are talking of reducing waste, the simple fact of keeping wet and dry separate will itself reduce the waste. Because dry waste is maybe 20% by weight, but more than 55–60% by volume. So if we can keep the dry waste out of the dumps, that will be a huge benefit apart from having all those resources available for recycling. And this story of the municipalities taking well segregated waste from households and dumping it mixed in a single vehicle, I hear across the country repeatedly. What is really working is that there needs to be a separate day for dry waste, 1 day a week or max 2 days a week. And no dry waste should be accepted on the other 5 or 6 days. And that's the only way to keep it separate. Excuse me. So, yeah, this works well. Another thing which is working very well is micro planning for a city, dividing a panchayat or a tiny town or a metro or its wards or anything into small micro units of about 200, 250 households. Then one can plan a collection route and plan not to change those workers, keep them fixed for a particular route so that people come to know them, they come to know the people who are cooperating, not cooperating, and they can be trained. So there's a great need for a management input into this. And the city of Warangal is a great example. In 3 weeks, they were able to convert this city of, I think, 17 lakhs from totally mixed waste into almost totally segregated waste, just by a burst of intense effort and micro-planning. Another thing, I find a lot of the court cases are citizens saying, this dump is terrible, move it from here, take it away, go somewhere else. Well, this NIMBY attitude doesn't help. Why should someone pollute a virgin new site? We need to manage the sites which we have by reducing the dry waste which comes there and by managing the waste which is already there in the dump and the fresh waste which comes every day. When you form the waste into windrows, which is long parallel heaps about 2 meters high, 2-3 meters wide, with space in between for turning equipment to move. When you apply composting biocultures, even if there is some non-biodegradable waste in it, you turn it weekly after spraying the biocultures. Within 4 turnings, your waste volume comes down by 40%. That's huge. Can you imagine? Just unloading it in the correct way can reduce your dump volume by half almost. This has to be mandated. Unfortunately, that is not in the 2016 rules, how to unload the waste into windrows and manage it. So if we can keep the dry waste out and turn the wet waste and reduce its volume, that's a huge benefit. Another thing which has not been mentioned and is a big problem, the 2016 rules are very good. They say, what are the duties of citizens? Section 4. What are the duties of the municipality? Section 15. And in that, it says construction and demolition waste, debris, malba, rups, whatever you call it, has to be managed as per the construction and demolition rules. It's such an important waste that they created for the first time in 16 a separate rule for it. But unfortunately, municipalities don't read that line. And because there is a separate rule for C&D, they don't address that issue at all. Because dry waste can be either burnt if someone sets fire to it illegally, or it can be recycled. The wet waste will come down in volume and eventually decompose. But the debris and malba just doesn't disappear. And when that is mixed with other waste, the heaps just grow and grow. and cities deliberately adding a layer of Malba over every layer of garbage is the worst possible thing that can be done. So I think Vidhi can have a look at construction and demolition waste as the next issue. Another thing I would like to suggest that before any court admits a case by a citizen saying move this dump or remove this or that, find out if the petitioner or that category of people are complying with their Section 4 duties and responsibilities as per the rules. They can't point fingers to the municipality saying, I'll continue to give mixed waste, but you take it somewhere away from my site. And the municipalities defending their case saying we're doing everything we can should not be entertained unless they can prove what they have done for complying with their Section 15 mandatory duties. If they have to go on record before they can even be heard and choke up the courts, I think that should reduce the number of cases and the frustration of the bench that how can you monitor anything if there is no will to implement? Are there any other questions you'd like to ask about specific issues?
No, so I don't have any personal questions, but yeah, our participants have some questions. So we'll take like after your, after you finish your talk. Yeah, so we have 2 questions now. So the one question for you, some Avli Verma, she asked that you spoke about managing the existing landfill sites, but how can those be managed when these are not properly lined and toxic leachate? Sorry. Yeah, toxic leachates pollute the groundwater and aquifers.
Good. I'm glad you reminded me. One of the best guidelines to come out is from the CPCB on bioremediation of existing landfills. I mentioned that if waste is unloaded in parallel ribs, heaps, and turned, the volume comes down. And when it gets air, leachate is not generated and methane is not generated. So apart from unloading the waste sensibly, if you take an existing dump and if you expose all the waste to air instead of capping by making it absolutely airtight, which will generate more leachate and more methane, and it's the worst possible thing to do, and you can't use that land. If you bioremediate it by just grooving it into windrows and turning them, the volume will come down. It becomes dry enough for screening so that the dry waste, which should not have been mixed in the first place, and the bricks and rocks, they can be separated. The fines will be organic material, not compost, but a soil improver. And the bricks and stones and all can go for road making. The dry waste which comes out in Calcutta's Dhapa right now, there's a machine which is taking all this blown away plastic and making it into plastic board for furniture and desks and so on. So even after it is unmixed, these fractions can be used. And if one starts from the top chewing, it's possible to bring a dump site down. If you go to my website, YouTube, and look at Gurugram, you will see how an 80-100 foot mountain in 1 year was brought down to parallel heaps of just 15 feet height. And then it was ready for screening, but the person who did it was forced to hand over the site for waste to energy. And the hill is within 1 year higher than what it had been over a 3-year collection. So there needs to be political will and no corruption in giving, wrong tenders for this. So bioremediation is being done very seriously in the state of Tamil Nadu. Except for the city of Chennai, everything else comes under the Commissioner of Municipal Administration. Every single one of their urban local bodies has been assigned somebody and awarded tenders to do this bioremediation and biomining. Bioremediation means forming windrows, applying biocultures and turning to bring down the volume, reduce the moisture and the leachate and methane. And the biomining is then the screening of that. It's a two-step thing. First, you stabilize the waste. You can also call it bio-drying, and then do the screening into different usable fractions. So certainly dump sites can be made to disappear. And when they come down and the 10% which is left will raise the ground level perhaps by a couple of meters. And you have that entire site, not a new site, but the same site available for doing things right the second time around.
Thank you, ma'am. So now I have one question for Justice Geeta Mittal. Ma'am, I hope you are there. So one question for interesting question that I would like to know about legal standing on ownership of garbage. Waste belongs to households and then to municipality once it enters the public collection or disposal system. What does this mean for informal waste pickers with regard to its ownership?
Oh, I haven't even thought about it. Why don't we ask Almitra Patel about it?
Yes.
Ownership, I don't know. None of the household owners claim proprietorship. Once they've handed it over to the garbage picker, what is the context? Please ask who's asked the question and what context are they asking this?
No, I will answer. This question has come up often.
Yes.
Contracts have been given in Gurugram to that waste to energy party. And they actually threatened the resident welfare associations that you dare not segregate your waste, you dare not give any of the dry waste to any waste pickers. It all belongs to us because they get paid by tonnage. I think if there is one single rule that we need to undo across the length and breadth of India, is not to pay for garbage transport by weight, because that is absolutely counterproductive to the interest of the transporter. He will want to carry the maximum last gram of plastic carry bag to the dump site. If we can have a non-weight based, an area based, household based, street length based, population based method of payment based on the payments he's had earlier.
That's the dumping fee aspect.
Dumping fee is separate. It's what the place demands for accepting it. This is the secondary transporting fee. If they are not paid by ton, they will be quite happy to carry the dry waste separately to the nearest recycling kabadiwala and not spend their fuel to go all the way to the dump. They can take their wet waste perhaps to any farmer who is willing to accept the wet waste in smaller towns. In cities, it's difficult. Now, coming to the ownership of waste, it's not anybody else's ownership except the generators until they decide to throw it out of their hand and say, now, I don't want it, you deal with it. So if they want to sell their newspapers, their bottles, their carry bags, pet bottles, milk sachets, anything, it's all theirs. Only when they relinquish ownership of it and throw it at the municipality does their ownership cease. And a municipality, the municipal laws usually say waste belongs to us. Most of the old British municipal acts and rules say that. But if they allow the if they allow the waste pickers access to it, it is a huge saving for the municipality. The question is, sometimes the municipalities don't want money saved because they're making so much money out of waste management. It's a huge corruption feeding machine. But ideally, on the dry waste collection days, with micro planning, if teams of self-help groups of waste pickers can be assigned to 1 or 2 or 3 particular 250 house groups, the dry waste day need not be the same across the whole city. It can be ward-wise or zone-wise, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So the dry waste collectors can go to these houses and get clean, unsoiled waste, which will give them better value. And there will be that much less to be transported, which of course the transport contractors won't like unless we get them off the payment by weight system.
Actually, in a movie also, like Swati Sambyal, she mentioned about this thing, this tipping fee, and we should do away with this, paying by rate. So yeah, we fully agree with what you suggest. There is one more question. This is like, how can waste pickers be organized into a more formal system?
Shall I take that?
Yes, ma'am, please.
In Bangalore, there are 2 major people who are managing waste pickers. I think the best example is in Pune, that the waste pickers cooperative, where they have been formed almost into a union with the SNDT University help. And they themselves go and do the door-to-door collection, keep the dry waste they want. Some of them are trained even to do the composting of the wet waste, either somewhere else or as a service provision within a colony or a community to manage the wet waste on behalf of those people's responsibilities. So Pune is almost entirely managed at the grassroots level by the informal sector who has been semi-formalized. Bangalore has constructed dry waste sorting centers and collection centers, 1 per ward. Of course, there's a lot of opposition and some MLAs get it knocked out from there and so on, or some citizens object and have them closed down. But by and large, of the 198 wards, I think 188 are working. And here also the municipality has given them auto rickshaws and told them you can have this route or that route to collect the dry waste on the dry waste days. So it automatically flows to where it needs to flow. And I think there is an alliance of Indian waste pickers, of which Nalini of Hasirudala in Bangalore was, or maybe still, the president. So I think AIW can give a lot of input into this.
Thank you, ma'am. So, ma'am, last question for Justice Mittal, and this is like a question which we came across while we're doing the research on implementation of judgments. So we have seen in many examples, including the West, the court had to take the role of executives and policymakers, and they have to suggest, not even suggest, they have to constantly chasing the government and authorities to make the policy, make the law. Sometimes courts appoint committees of experts and they suggest some technology, and then the government accepts those things because they're under pressure to comply with the court directions. Sometimes this also doesn't go in the right direction. So some technology might be there which is very very fancy technology, and because court doesn't have this expertise and they have to often rely on the committees, the government under the pressure of courts, they have to comply. So what do you think is the best way? Because we have realized the system is not working and court had to take that role. But is this do you see is this working in the long term? The way this.
Oh yes, you see so many areas. It's called a continuing mandamus, where a court actually continues to monitor what it has ordered and to ensure that it is implemented. Such successful examples in Delhi. solid BL Vadera's matter, then CNG, traffic, there's so many instances across the country, in fact, so many of the MC Mehta matters, and they have succeeded, the court passed orders and ensured that they were complied with, tanneries, all those river pollution, so much that has happened in this country. Orders that the Supreme Court has passed on wetlands, they are percolated into the deep mountains and jungles in Jammu and Kashmir even. But what I have found is that passing orders which are implementable is a real art, and the PIL gives the court a huge opportunity to ensure the compliances of all laws relating, especially environment is one huge area. Sexual violence is huge. You see the Vishaka judgment. It's totally out of context in the current program. But one of the matters which was pending for several years, for almost 18 years by the time I reached Jammu and Kashmir, was the Dal Lake matter. So clearly seeing the kind of problems involved, the lake was getting polluted, it was suffocating. There was encroachment on all along the boundaries. None of the boundaries were earmarked. We didn't know what was the real size of the Dal Lake. Then people had built all around the boundary despite the court order prohibiting construction within 200 meters. Then you had those floating gardens and a population inside the Dal Lake which had to be removed, and therefore relocation. You had chemical fertilizer pollution from the golf course which was on the boundary. So there were so many multifaceted problems. Relocation required land acquisition, a huge inflow of the funds from the government to ensure a meaningful rehabilitation in colonies where people could stay, where there were schools, colleges, etc. You had to push the people you had to motivate the people to contribute meaningfully to the cleaning up of the Dal Lake. There were houseboats, which had no sewage connections at all. They were dumping the entire sewage into the lake. So all this had to be monitored, and how was to do it? The court did not have the wherewithal. There were 4 or 5 committees which had been in existence, and the members were getting paid a lot of money. So almost 400 crores had just gone into the lake. So when I went there, I had appointed a committee. Now you needed somebody who had worked in several areas and had multitasked. Who was best to do this but Mr. Sridharan, the Metro Man as he is called. So I requested him and I appointed him as the chairperson. You needed somebody who was an environmentalist at heart and had worked with the government to know which department, how to work the bureaucracy, how to work the political government. So I appointed Dr. Nivedita Haran. She was the former additional secretary in government of Kerala, who had worked in the Ministry of Urban Affairs in Delhi. Then the third person was Mr. MC Mehta. Everybody knows him, he's a household person. And originally, Dr. Sridharan said he is too old and he wouldn't be able to work. He was in Kerala. So I appointed his second in command, Mr. Mangu Singh, as a member. But Dr. Sridharan later on wanted to do the work. So we appointed him on the committee as a consultant. They did wonderful work. They put together, originally they were hiring, weeding machines from Holland or somewhere in Europe at cost of crores of rupees. Mr. Sridharan was able to get the Cochin dockyard to Port Trust to make machines for the Kashmir government. And we saved crores and crores of rupees. So they bought 4 machines which are doing wonderful de-weeding work. Dal Lake certainly looks better. At the same time, for the first time in the history of Jammu and Kashmir, we appointed the Archaeological Survey of India to give us the boundaries of the Dal Lake. We got the boundary for the first time. We got drone photography done to ensure no further construction work comes on. And the rehabilitation program was at an advanced stage. One site had been identified and work for building sites was on. For the first time, geotagging and GPS mapping of all the houseboats was done. So that, and biodigesters were already installed on a trial basis on some houseboats to see how effective they could be. Unfortunately, Corona came. and the influx of tourists stopped, and they've had no tourists and no occupancy of those dull boats, with only the owners are occupying. So sewage generated is minimal. But we've put in a lot of measures only because the committee assisted the court. The court only had to monitor that things were moving along. But some kind of a control was necessary. There's a huge debate about judicial overreach, permissibility of such kind of intervention. I think these kind of matters, such kind of intervention is absolutely imperative. The loss is so huge, and perhaps if we had been a little more vigilant and ensured that the environment guidelines laid down by the United Nations, the international agencies, as well as the laws laid down by the Government of India, the rules and regulations, so many rules, so many regulations that Almitra has spoken about. People on the ground may not be, construction companies don't follow them and may plead ignorance even, but they would be more vigilant if we had been more vigilant as a society, and perhaps taken more assistance from the judiciary as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you to both of you. So we will move to vote of thanks. Before that, Doel is here. So Doel is she's from Riverbank Studios, and we made these documentary movies with the Riverbank Studios. And I know, Doel, you are there, no?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Sorry. So yeah. So I know Riverbank has been making a lot of wildlife and science documentaries for broadcasting on TV channels, and I believe this was the first time you have worked on something which is legal, purely legal, and by virtue it's a very complicated subject to deal with the environment judgments and show it to the movie. So how was your experience while producing these documentaries, and any particular learning you wish to share as a filmmaker?
Yeah, sure. I think every time we start working on a film, science, environment, or legal, I think we know that it's going to be a path of learning, because that's our job as communicators, is to take complicated concepts and theories and work, or like Geeta ma'am and Amrita ma'am are doing. I mean, these are landmark things that are happening in the country. And as communicators, it is our job to learn about that and find simple ways to bring it to the common man. And like Geeta ma'am said, that knowledge and sensitization is key for anything to change, whether you want to reduce and Amrita ma'am said that political will is important. So to bring education, sensitization, and political will to happen, I think communication is also key. So I think that's where we feel our role is as filmmakers, and we take it very seriously. And we are very happy that Vidhi created this opportunity to talk about 5 very important judgments in the country. And I hope we can take it everywhere. And if some hearts and minds are changed, then our job is a little bit done. Thank you.
Thank you, Doel. Thank you, Doel. And it was indeed a pleasure working with your studio with such expertise, and our work was easier working with you. And also with this, I just, before I invite Yogini for the vote of thanks, I just want to mention these movies were part of, like as you mentioned in the beginning, we have one report which analyzed the judgments, and we have these 5 movies. So they are now available on Vidhi's website. So we will share the link after this. And over to you, Yogini, for the vote of thanks. Yeah.
So we've come to the end of the project Coating the Environment, and thank you all for being here with us today. Thanks, Dave, for giving me this opportunity. First of all, I'd like to thank and express my gratitude to the esteemed panelists here, that is Justice Geeta Mittal and Ms. Almitra Patel, ma'am. You've been champions of the environment, and it's been an honor to have you here with us. This particular film would not have been possible without the able support of Sunil Kumarji, who widely reports in Hindi on the lives of waste workers and is also a social activist. He worked with us and educated us about the ground level challenges around solid waste management, and took us around all the landfills and where waste workers stay also. Particularly for this film series, we would like to thank Riverbank Studios, especially Gautam Pandey, Doel Trivedi, Gautam Arora, Aditi Sharma, Ranjit Kumar, for being great collaborators. We would like to thank Dia Mirza, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us today, for being a part of this project. These movies would have been impossible without all the experts who shared their time and valuable insights with us, and all the people who participated in the shoot. The team that worked on this project, which is the films as well as the report, comprised of Dr. Dhwani Mehta, our mentor, Debaditya, I, Shama Kuryakose, and Isha Rana. This project would not have been possible without all the painstaking and exciting brainstorming and shoot days. Doel, we as lawyers truly got to see a different world. Thanks to you for that. This project was amply supported by our colleagues at Vidhi, who provide us with a wonderful workplace. We must, with special appreciation, mention that our colleague Chitrakshi helped us in naming the project Coating the Environment. We would like to thank Dr. Orgo Sengupta for encouraging us to undertake this ambitious exercise. We would like to express our gratitude to our funders, Tata Development and Education Trusts, and Voltus for making this work possible. And lastly, but very importantly, we would like to thank the audience for being present with us to mark the end of this journey of Coating the Environment. It's very special. Thank you so much. Follow us on Twitter at Vidhi_India and subscribe to our newsletter from the website for keeping yourself more of such interesting research and events. We hope that all of you are keeping safe in these really difficult and tumultuous times. And with that, we come to the very end of this event. Thank you, Debaditya, once again, and have a pleasant evening and goodbye. I think, yeah.
We can do this. Thank you.